Morning, I'm Travis, the Commercial Director here at LMS. I'm joined by the wonderful Gemma Young from Moverly. And we're talking all things NPTN and the Lloyds, Connells, Moverly, TM, LMS proof of concept we're currently doing in the market that we launched in late April. Gemma, how are you?
I'm doing really good, thank you. It's a very hot day here in London, but we're working through it.
Yes, no, it's probably wise to say you've got 5 weeks left-ish before we're off on maternity. Is that right? And as you're dealing with all this hot weather?
True. Adding to the temperature pressures. Yeah.
Well, it's braver than I am. I mean, it could be worse. You could be having a newborn baby in this weather. So hopefully it's all done and dusted by the time the baby arrives.
Yeah,
But I
no
hope
more
you're doing
heat
well.
waves in August, please.
No, what could go wrong, right? It's like we're on this direction of travel for sure. I was talking to my brother in Australia and middle of winter and still quite warm in Australia. So with this kind of El Nino stuff going on. So I don't think anyone's spared at the moment. But anyway, we digress already. That's you and I and what we do very, very well. So as you know, at the end of April, we went into a proof of concepts, an extension of the pilot that we ran in 2024, 2025, where we took material information using the Moverly platform into the Connells Estate Agency brand, Peter Allen, and we dished that information out using the PDTF as our standards and framework through NPTN into law firms. And the idea around that pilot was to see if we could make an impact on cancellation rates, customer experience, time to exchange, and obviously completion timescales. I think to you and I both raised the glass at the time when we saw some wonderful stats from that pilot, where we saw 35% reduction in cancellations and time to exchange. So this is a new pilot, obviously. This is an extension where we bring other actors into this journey to see how brokers and lenders can obviously influence and utilize the information that we're doing. So if you wouldn't mind just giving a couple minutes on Moverly and obviously Moverly's role in the pilot, and let's get started.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, a bit about Moverly. We basically aggregate the upfront intelligence that helps transactions run more smoothly. So I guess that, and this is very timely with all of the reform statements coming out in the past month. What we're seeing is obviously upfront preparation is so unbelievably key, but the real distinction here is it's not just about upfront preparation, it's about connection of that. So the work that we're obviously doing together and with Lloyds and with Connells and with others in the market means that we can collect this kind of smart upfront intelligence that then helps the rest of the transaction flow. So conveyancers can make decisions more easily. Now lenders can make decisions more easily, which is the right kind of line of travel for this industry.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting, actually, because I think where we started, and take the data standards and the PDTF, so the trust framework to one side, in the original pilot, we kind of created a point-to-point integration, didn't we? It was one actor, through that kind of middleware, which is NPTN, to the conveyancers. This pilot that we're doing at the moment is not around point-to-point. It's about multiple people getting access to the same information at the same time. And that's what makes it truly unique, really. And I suppose from your point of view, give me a little bit about Moverly's particular role in the proof of concept and how you see the kind of the role of different actors kind of coming together under a singular data standard, a singular way of working, and the benefits you hope to see.
Well, I think the benefits that we've already in part seen, which is the great thing, and it's why we're here. I mean, so to break it down to what Moverly is doing and has done in the pilot and now kind of continues to do across the industry. Our focus is collecting information. So our normal way into the market would be to work with an estate agent. Obviously, they have a lot of compliance pressures on them. So we're collecting material information, we're collecting AML, we are collecting DSR information, digital sale ready, which is basically a lot of the legal, the TA or the law society forms that everybody will in the sector probably be familiar with. And then we're kind of applying intelligence on that. And as I say, the real vital thing is the connection that goes beyond that point, right? So HIPS is going to come up, home information packs, in this conversation. It's come out early.
The digital HIP, I keep getting referred to it as.
Yeah, and you know what? The intentions of that scheme were really, really good, but it was in a very different time. And digital technology was not where it was today. And now we obviously have AI and we have a lot more kind of connection opportunities. So the real distinction here and what we're seeing is that the industry are coming together to say, well, great if you're collecting this information up front, but unless we agree to do that in a way that we can reuse and reaccess and we can trust, which is so key, you're only making a kind of faster horse, right? You're not really changing the whole way this is done. So what we try and do is collect that data in a way that it can be trusted, reaccessed, and connected throughout the whole of the transaction by banks, by lawyers, etc.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we're going to go into the challenges that the different actors face in a second, really. But I think Moverly, obviously playing that really key role at the first customer interaction phase, where if you're an estate agency and you're utilizing the Moverly platform, the customer goes through that Moverly journey and we start that data collection piece. I think for me, it's so vital. So, we've got this process now where the first customer interaction, the first time they enter the process, every bit of information that we're collecting does get standardized. It is available for reuse. It is consented and all those things that make it smart data. It's the first time really on scale that we're doing that. So although we refer to this as a proof of concept, the Connells rollout that we've done independently, the proof of concept is a scaled rollout where 170 branches were live. We're using the Moverly platform across those 170 branches. The customer feedback's been excellent. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you say the first time that customer gets into the process, all the information is being collected in a digital UI, and it's all being reused. So it's the material information, it's your TA forms, it's your ID and your AML, search is being ordered up front. All that information that we know has value to other actors on the process is being captured, standardized, and distributed. I think on scale and on mass across those multiple actors, it's probably the first real use case digitally. Take the hips to one side where we tried to do these things previously, where this has happened. And for me, the true bit of innovation here, other than the stuff that we all built individually, is the trust framework, the sharing capability sits behind it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much innovation going on, and everybody now will see the absolute capabilities of AI in all, like, globally. So it's a very exciting time for a lot of, and scary time, of course,
Yeah.
for the world, really. But in underlying this, you're rightly saying that the framework that underpins it, and we obviously call it a trust framework, that's so key. It technically allows these pieces of information to move. But the technical side is actually not the most important. It's the collaboration and the trust that I've never seen before. I've worked in this industry a long time and dreamed about the collaboration that we're seeing, not just from businesses, but from government, around this trust framework and how it's respected and how we use it to standardize the way that we move this data. And that is so key. Without that, we can't move it in a trusted way. So it's an exciting time.
No, and it is one of the major challenges we've had to overcome, which is how do we get everyone working to the same standard or trusting information that's being shared and being made available. And we're going to kind of move into challenges a little bit here. I mean, for me, that was one of the things we had to overcome, which is how do we get all the different actors, being comfortable with the information they're being presented with in a way that they feel like they can reuse it. From your point of view, what are some of the other challenges that we're faced with today as an industry about either this pilot, or part of the Moverly platform that we're starting to overcome, or literally starting to at least get into the weeds of and figure out how we can solve some of these issues?
Well, it's worth saying I'm pretty positive about the way the market's moving, and it's the natural adoption curve that you see with most innovation, where you get the early adopters. We're definitely there with the early adopters, which is an exciting time, and then you start getting to the kind of middle, and then the people who will be a bit slower to adopt this. The challenge is always adoption, but I think the signs are really great, and we've certainly got, I think, a market that is understanding that this is not only regulation and legislation and compliance and all that really jazzy stuff, but it's commercially beneficial. That's the key. That's the driver. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's the reason why people are really looking at this from all of these different professions, and consumers are very happy to do it because it means that they are more likely to move home. And that's what brought me here in the first place, was just I was an estate agent years ago. The fall through rate was not even as bad as it is now at that point. And then I worked, I worked at Google for many years, and I saw all this innovation happening. It didn't really come to this sector until late, but it feels like the property sector and all the adjacent services, their moment is now. This is really transforming now. And we can, really leverage where we are and take that time to drive more adoption, which is commercially beneficial. It means more mortgages will close, lawyers will get paid more, estate agents will get paid more. 1 in 3 properties around about that fall through now. What we've seen, obviously, with the work that we're doing, is that a significant increased proportion of those will actually get to completion, which also means happier customers. People can move home more easily, and that's my life's mission, just to make moving home more easy for everybody who's had to go through this in their life.
No. And you're right, for the most part, we kind of all get paid back end upon completion. We've all got that kind of that commonality in our goals in terms of how do we get more cases through to completions in the right way as quickly as possible. And we see in other parts of the world where transactions take a shorter period of time. And there is kind of other, we'll get into binding agreements and stuff in a minute, I'm sure, with the MHCLG response, but where there's a more secure, more transparent process, customers feel more confident. And obviously recently the government has picked this up, and they speak about the impact to GDP. So even people outside the specific industry looking at this going, we can make this better, and actually there is a commercial benefit for us all. But change isn't without challenge, I think. And you're right, the early adopters have kind of grabbed this and they're going, we get it, we want to understand it. But there also is some skepticism about whether this will be the change that we're looking for. But also there's other challenges outside technology that we can't, as where we sit in our processes, we can't really influence. And we see this on LinkedIn, talking about the number of conveyancers or pricing and stuff. We can't influence those things. So we're really focused on the bits that we can influence. And one of those things is customer experience, too, is technology and data sharing. But back to that change being, without some problematic and costly. Let's talk about the MHCLG response, and particularly how this influences estate agencies. So if I read the MHCLG response that was released a couple of Fridays ago now, one of the biggest areas that's going to be impacted will be estate agents. It talks about binding agreements, but also talks about material information packs and sales packs, upfront searches, these things being mandated, or at least legislated, and a voluntary code of conduct being entered into the estate agency space moving forward. Now, if I'm an estate agency, I can read that in one of two ways. I can see that this is an opportunity for me to come and influence the change that's coming and be an early adopter, as you mentioned before. Or I can sit and wait and see what happens. I suppose from your point of view, working very close with estate agencies, talk to me about how you read the MHCLG response, the impacts and the response you've had from estate agencies, and probably what feedback you're getting and what they're looking to do next, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, we obviously been working quite closely with the whole industry really, and the government. So first thing to say is, they didn't obviously do this work in a silo, and it really does feel that MHCLG and a lot of the civil servants that have worked on this really listened and took feedback over a long period of time. And so it wasn't a surprise. It was actually a lot of the things that the industry has been asking for, we've been lobbying for years. So I think it's a welcome change. But as you rightly say, that comes with then a pressure put on industry to adapt. And we are definitely seeing, a real interest in how do I leverage these times. There's a real opportunity for estate agents to obviously be out in the front room talking about this with the clients that they serve, and to be able to not just say, look, get prepared up front because it's a good thing to do, but to also say, get prepared up front because this is becoming law. And now we have seen the results of the work that's gone into this, and it means that you are, almost twice as likely to complete on your property sale. You're going to make it stand out to the buyers coming in because they'll know it's really been well prepared. You are more likely to actually make the move that you want to make in actually less time. There's a lot of very kind of compelling selling points for the customer. So we're definitely seeing a real group of kind of forward focused agents who are just loving this opportunity, and it really can be game changing for their commercials, for their profit and loss, and it's driving huge upsides, because ultimately, like you say, most people get paid at the end of a transaction when it completes. So we're all incentivized to get that completion number up, and that is what all of this work is attempting to help.
Yeah, if I'm reading the M8CLG response, arguably there's a kind of a lack of detail on some parts, which has been fed back. And I think across the industry, if you look at LinkedIn or any of the forums, and some of the dates probably need a little bit more firming up. But one thing that was absolutely clear was they're going to look to private enterprise people in industry to help guide the next steps in terms of what becomes legislation, what becomes law, and what that process looks like. And talking about material information and sales packs specifically, there was recommendations on maybe what should be included, but there's also a recommendation to say, we're going to go and ask what's going to have the most value here. So if you're an estate agency, you've got an opportunity to influence this, right? In terms of what's in a material information pack, what's in a sales pack moving forward to make sure it's the most benefit to your customers. So, from your point of view, is an opportunity for estate agencies to get involved early and start influencing what that change looks like. So change happens with them rather than to them, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think, the key here is also linking what information is confirmed. Material information is still a required, thing at the moment. There was obviously, I think it was 2023, if I've got the dates right, in the November of that year, when the information was it was tightened, and the estate agents were really asked to provide material information again. And then obviously slightly later, because we saw quite an adoption at that point of agents coming on board, certainly with Moverly, and using our system, which just helped them bring together material information without them having to do anything really, but just aggregated it for them. And then the CMA were brought in as the enforcer of that, and there was a bit of a grey area. But it's still required, and actually the CMA have arguably got kind of bigger teeth in this, and they can fine agents. So it's not going away, that's for sure. And the actual the work now to put this in place is certainly is in motion.
Yeah, and there's a pathway to that, isn't there, as well? So if you're an estate agency and you want to influence this, there's working groups, things the likes of yourself and LMS you can come to can kind of represent you with some of these trade bodies. But there's a real opportunity to influence this now. And I think this is a really good time for you and I to be having this conversation. It's one thing you and I, who are technology providers in the space, kind of working in these working groups, but we know that we go back to the market all the time and ask for feedback about what happened. So, for those who might be fearful of the change or the adoption curve, this is a real opportunity for you to come and have your say, right? And, there's a short period of time over the next probably 3 to 6 months where they'll be going to do, some requests for information. They'll be asking the market what's best practice look like. So there's an opportunity to go and influence what happens next. And I think it's a really exciting time for all those actors, whether it be big or small, not just the big boys who can come play here, come and influence that next stage of change. So let's talk about that for a second, but let's talk about adoption. So you just talk about moving.
Just sorry, Trav, on that point, and we definitely see, and we've worked with the agents who, and there's like regional differences of what is material in other areas, and so we've got to represent all of this in different ways. But it's also, again, coming back to the collaboration that we're seeing, what's amazing is the reality is what we need to satisfy up front with material or what's in a sales pack ultimately needs to satisfy what a conveyancer and what a lender needs to see. And what the greatest examples of how this is working really well are when those three different kind of professions, and then you talk about surveys and condition reports, as when those things all come together to say, how do we do this in the best way up front? Because an estate agent's role is obviously to inform their buyer and to support their seller. But actually, if we go a little bit further and say, well, how do we get the right information so that on day one of this property being marketed, we know exactly what we need in order to make firm decisions on actually how we're going to lend, or the legal questions have already been kind of contained. So the best examples of this are when estate agents, lawyers, lenders work together to decide what needs to be in this information. It's not just buyer beware. It's not, it's not just that. It's the whole thing. If we get that right, and by the way, I think we're 90% there, then the whole decision process changes, right? Then lenders can literally make a decision on a mortgage. It doesn't have to go to mortgage in principle. They can make a decision because all of the information they need is available. That's the, I hate using transformation too much, but that is transformation, because you are literally providing the intelligence that doesn't just allow you to make assumptions or in principle. It's certainty, and it so that's what we talk about, is the data that we collect will allow people to make decisions, not projections about where this may go or what it might be valued at, right?
Yeah, that's a huge change, right? Think about the industry where we are today, the process today, which is quite linear. Each actor does their bit, kind of one after the other, and not much information is shared other than that point-to-point stuff we mentioned before. What you're talking about is a kind of a fully connected ecosystem of people sharing information, instant decisioning, removing all that kind of lack of certainty you mentioned. That's huge. That's a huge amount. That's a brand new process, completely different to where today. There's going to be people fearful of that amount of change, Gem, in terms of how we go about it. And is that problem too big? Is that problem statement too big? How do we make adoption easier? We've got some great platforms, some great technology, the connectivity is there, the motivations are high. So if you're an estate agency or a lender or a law firm or a surveyor listening to this and going, we're boiling the ocean, what would you be your response? So how do we respond to saying we can make adoption simple?
I think we are able, because we're still working in our respective fields. What we're trying to do is just connect them. So, when, for example, we talk about condition or survey reports, the traditional approach, and this goes for legal forms, has been PDFs that get emailed around. If that's about as digital as it gets, right? So in all of those different kind of spheres, if we can make sure that the way that data is being prepared is done so in a way that we can digitally ingest that data. So you're doing a condition report. Let's think beyond a PDF. How do you make that condition report, available via an API? How do you make it digital information that can then feed into this transaction flow in a way that it could be, accessed? Let's take out the paper-based. I mean, that's what the consultation literally called out. It's like the end of paper-based forms. The consultation called out AI conveyancing. This is literally the government saying this is the way the market's going. So how do we then build the foundations underneath to allow that to happen? Well, we have to digitize each of those sectors and make sure that they can communicate with each other. So as long as we work together and look at what that looks like, we can tweak those individual silos. I'm not saying that Moverly, or you're not saying that NPTN is going to fix this whole thing. The point is we're trying to build the wires and support the whole industry so that they can do their bit in their industry, so it interconnects and it interoperates.
Yeah, that's important bit, especially from an NPTN point of view. Our job is to connect, to the infrastructure layer that shares information, that data exchange, that orchestration platform. It's not there to replace the processes. The individual actors in their respective fields will decide what they do with their processes and this information. The important thing for us is that information is given to them at the right time to make better decisions. with a level of certainty that comes with the validity of the information. I do think, and someone asked me the question the other day, what's the biggest challenge to the technology? And I said, technology I don't think is a blocker anymore. I think we know how to do this.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years, the trust frameworks and the data sharing capabilities have been matured across all the different industry actors. We've seen the benefits of certain proof of concepts even roll out into industry. The level of technology now, I'd say, is at an industrial scale where this can support rollout. For me, the challenge is what's that first step we all take together to make sure that we're kind of bringing everyone in active. So it becomes a little bit around that change management and then distribution for me to make sure that everybody in the process has got equal access to information. So that that adoption curve needs to be really, really simple, really, really easy. I think where these things have failed in the past, not just in the home buying and selling process, but across all industry going through this level of change, is where adoption's been too difficult, too great, too expensive. I think we as technology providers need to do everything that we possibly can do to make that adoption as simple and as cheap and quick as possible, and make sure that all actors are considered. So if we do that, which I hope we are very much trying to do that, then I do think with the motivations in the market, the response from government, and like you said before, everybody's got something to gain from this. Nobody loses out. It's just really, really nice product to be involved in. When you go, we all gain from this, nobody loses. It's quite exciting to be part of it. So I'm going to ask you to fast forward, if you don't mind, Jen. You've been doing this for years now. This is not a new question for you whatsoever, but you've been talking about North Star for a long time in terms of, I've been following Moverly's journey. Obviously, we're LMS in it and Moverly go back quite a long way. What's going to be normal to a consumer in a few years' time? So if you fast forward your brain to a vendor entering the process or a buyer buying a property, what's going to be a normal home buying selling process in your view in the future?
Well, other markets have shown that this is possible. It's actually just that England and Wales are a little bit behind of what's possible. But having said that, now I think this country is getting the data foundations better so that it will supersede what other markets, what other domains and destinations can do around property. So the journey I think about is, if I'm a buyer, I'm on the market looking for a house, and I know that house is digital sale ready, I know that I'm going to have an easy journey. Like I know it's not maybe I go to the airport and 1 in 3 of my flights doesn't take off, which is what the stat is now for the house market, right? 1 in 3
I'm
times.
not sure the flying industry is much different, to be fair, at the moment, Jen, but we'll get to that another day, maybe. We'll solve that next.
But I literally am like, right, this house is digital sale ready, which means I'm going to commit to this. I have all of the information at my fingertips. When I make the offer, I choose, along with the person selling the house, the target date that we are going to make this happen, and that's it. And I will move on that date. And the interest rate that I will get for my mortgage will be this, because somebody's looked at my information, the property's information, and they've been able to make a decision that this is what they will lend on. And I sign a contract with a date and I make the move on that date. And that happens 100% of the time. You did say in 2 years' time. I don't think we'll be at 100% completion rates, being honest, in 2 years' time. But I do think we will be having a huge impact on the England and Welsh property market completion rates. I think we're going to see them really change because we've got some really big players in the market really looking to do this work. Connell's being, over 10% of the market doing this work to impact others, influence others to do this work, which will mean we'll get more visibility of chains. The whole market can move together and make these improvements. Yeah,
I think that's a combination. What you're saying is you've got your binding agreements, which is in your MHCLG response. You've got your smart data, supported by material information sale ready packs at the front, and the DSR standard that you mentioned before. The connected ecosystem allows each professional actor the information they need to do what they're really, really good at. And that's the thing that's really, really important here. Each actor is so good at what they do but we spend so much time dealing with noise. I think one of the simplest ways I describe what we're doing is we're just trying to remove some of the noise, that data collection process, that regular onboarding, the customer ownership, the duplication of effort, as well as the standardization of key information. There's some really low-hanging fruit, which we know is a problem. We get the feedback all the time. And some more sophisticated stuff that we'll learn as we're going on in terms of how AI impacts our journey, etc. But there is that natural first step I think we're all starting to take. I think it is data sharing in terms of information being captured once and being shared is universal across all the actors. They see the benefit of that. And that's the thing I think I've been quite buoyed at myself personally, is we found that commonality of the first step. And maybe something that was missing 12, 18 months ago when the problem was too big, and we're talking kind of quite long term. But now actually we're starting to break this down into tangible and meaningful steps. But yeah, the corralling of every single industry actor into a singular data standard and working a way that they're all happy with, is quite a complex beast. And my view of this, and Jen, I'm sure you agree with this, is please, if you're listening to this and you're not involved and you feel like you want to get involved, please do. It's not too late to influence the outcome and be part of what the next phase of our industry, which we all love so much, is going to look like and feel like moving forward. Because it's not, people want to listen, people want to hear from industry. And the MACLG response was so clear on this. We want to go back to industry and ask the questions about what good looks like. And I think the only way they're going to listen to what good looks like is by using practical examples of things that have been tested in live environments, hence the journey that we're all on together.
Yeah.
So on that, and what we're doing together at the moment with obviously the proof of concept with Lloyds and Connells and all those other actors I mentioned before, is this what excites you the most about this collaboration that we're doing? That it's providing a bit of a pathway, it's providing practical examples, or is there something else that's really motivating you guys behind this?
I mean, honestly, for me, it's a bit, I think it's an emotional one. This business for me and this industry is such an emotional one, in that when you need to move home, and sometimes you really need to move home for so many different reasons, that doesn't work very well for the people who need it. It could be going through a separation, or families changing, or needing to get children into schools. And so what motivates me is, through all of this work, making that more easy for people. And just to think that in a few years, I do believe that with everything that's happening, I hope when my kids grow up, they're not even going to know how much of a nightmare this experience has been for our generation. That they're just going to be like, okay, I'm ready. This is the house that I want to buy. And then they move in. But no, it really, I've seen people go through such hell when it doesn't work. And I've just seen this process and thought, how do we fix it? For decades, I've seen this. And so it's honestly such an inspiring time to be in this industry. And I just feel very confident that the pillars are there, and we're already seeing this is not going to go away. We are on the change now. It's just the earlier part of it.
You're right. And there's some wonderful people in our industry who work tirelessly, in what is a broken process to make it work, to make sure as many people as possible still move home. And I see the stresses and the pressures it puts on them, to work in conditions which are, archaic really at times, right? So anything that, from my point of view, we can do to try and help that journey and make sure those people get access to better information and can support their customers better, as we should be doing. So, I'm quite privileged to be in a position with LMS that we're really on that journey with the likes of you guys and all the other guys who are motivated in the space to go and try and help people live their dreams, right? Because we can't forget there's a customer behind this who's trying to move home, to your point, wants to move to a house closer to this kid's school, or improve their circumstances, and it's not easy to do that at the moment. So if we can do something to make it easy, we should.
The human side of the completion issue for the professionals that work on it is real, because they're, conveyancers, particularly on the front line, they're dealing with customers who are getting upset that things aren't working for them. They're not getting the margins in that industry because they work on so many cases that don't complete. I see this being such positive, because we could go from, what are the kind of record highs of transactions in this country, like 1.2 million. We could, if we just fix this, it's 1.6. It's like there's much more fluidity. The professional services that are, really impacted by not being able to go above that kind of level could be more efficient, more supported. The commercials can look much better. I know this is all sounding very rosy, but this is the reality of fixing this problem. You just like get a third more properties closing, and then people want to move more. It looks much more positive for the country.
Yeah, look, I think we touched on before. Change is hard. What we're trying to do is not easy. It's going to take, your point, years. 2 years is probably not going to be 100% completion. It's going to take a period of time, but it's worth it. I think it's what we're saying, right? I think there's so much benefit for everybody, that customer to the professionals in our industry, to the conditions we put ourselves in every single day. So those Friday afternoon nightmares go away, and we can create more transparency, more certainty, and better working conditions for the people who do it day in, day out. So, but it's not going to be easy. There's going to be challenges along the way. The thing that buoys me most, like I said before, is we have the ability to influence it. Change is not being thrust upon us as an industry. We've got a chance to influence what happens next. And that'll be my message to the market in terms of come and get involved, come and make sure change happens with you rather than to you. But before I let you go, Jim, what's your message back to the market? If you can tell them one thing about the change process that we're on, what would you say to anyone listening in today about what you should do next?
Well, I would basically think about, particularly if you're an estate agent, what upfront preparation can do for you today, and not just looking at it in that upfront preparation. Like, it's not just about upfront preparation, it's about the connection. So when you're thinking about how you adopt these new changes, don't just think, right, I've got to get this prepared up front. Think about, how do I do this in the way that connects with all these things we've been talking about? Because I guess like what we're seeing is, I don't know if this is a lack of understanding from others in the market, or, there's going to be a lot of excitement around, we can do some upfront, we can create a business in upfront preparation now, and we can just like start collecting this data. But without the connection into the trust framework and without the connectivity, we're not going to see that. So, and I'd say this to any other prop tech out there, if you're building something that does that, think about how you're fitting into the property data trust framework, how other people in the ecosystem will receive that information that you're collecting. Don't just think about upfront collection in a silo, because then we're just doing digital hips.
Yeah.
And this is not that, right? The best practice examples of what we're doing do upfront preparation that connects via a framework, and it's very technical, right? But it's via a framework into these other players. So that would be my biggest message.
Yeah, beautiful. Gemma, thank you very much for your time today. And good luck in the next 4 weeks dealing with this heat in the last stages of your pregnancy. I hope it all goes well for you.
Thanks, Trav.
Thanks very much.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.